pour on farms and all of that stuff.
Right.
And I mean, this goes
well,
back.
fluoride, of course, has long been used in rat poison. In fact, I was kind of surprised to find out that Prozac, which is one of the antidepressant drugs most commonly being prescribed here in the United States and in other countries as well, is 97% fluoride.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So when you take this fluoridation
yeah.
of the U.S. population and other populations, and you add in the chemtrails, and then you add in the all of the different chemicals and drugs that are being put into our food supply, like the Monsanto's Terminator seeds that don't allow the crops to go to seed,
exactly,
and the growth hormones that are all being included. I think you could see that we've probably got a really large-scale public health issue here, but it's not really being addressed.
Absolutely, and this obviously ties things back, at least to us, in the most recent news about all the bees disappearing. Because could there be a connection here? I mean,
well, absolutely. When you're spraying poison all over the place, chances are you're going to get the bees.
Sure.
Now, the bee thing is especially worrisome because Albert Einstein was once quoted as saying that if the bee population disappears in 4 years, man will disappear. Because the bees, of course, are the ones who pollinate and cross-pollinate the crops, which are eaten by the animals, which are our food supply. So in other words, in 4 years, there's no food supply. And what really is kind of amazing to me is that, we're getting this right now, that in Europe and in the United States, there is this mass die-off of the bee population. And what's 4 years from now? 2012. The very date that the Mayan calendar and many other ancient prophecies say is going to be the end of the world, or at least of this cycle.
Absolutely, yeah, indeed. Oh my God. Okay,
so
I mean,
as the old Chinese curse says, may you live in interesting times.
Indeed. I mean, do you think that all of this then could actually be a plan to instigate this, catastrophe, or is this something that happens?
Well, it certainly could. Mm-hmm. We have seen other programs. We've seen drugs put out that end up killing more people than they cure, and then, of course, once people finally realize this, they're withdrawn, but then usually taken to third world countries to sell. We can see all programs all throughout human history that one group wants to try to eradicate another group. And let me point this out to you. We're all concerned about global warming, but if you listen to some of the would-be rulers and leaders, for instance, Al Gore's popular movie, where he's talking about we have to do something about global warming, and of course he advocates just everybody giving up their cars, and we don't want to drive internal combustion engines anymore, and we have to undergo much more government regulation and restrictions. And yet what's not being pointed out to people is that yes, there is a problem on this planet with global warming, but it's not relegated to just this planet.
Exactly.
The sun is supposed to have been going into a period of decreasing sunspot and solar flares, and yet we see that the sun is actually heating up.
Yeah.
The polar caps on Mars are melting. The moon of Neptune, Triton, has been shown to be heating up. The outer planets are more luminescent now than ever, indicating that they are heating up.
Yeah.
So this is not really global warming. This is solar system warming.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And of course, what are we going to do about that? Well, we can't figure out what to do about that until we figure out what's causing it.
Exactly.
And nobody's real sure on what's causing it. Although, to me, one of the best ideas is actually goes back to the 80s when it was announced in the news media in this country that scientists had discovered a 10th planet out there that's approaching our solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been called by various names: the 10th planet, Planet X, Nibiru, Wormwood, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But if this is true, then what I see is that as this planet approaches the solar system, celestial mechanics come into play, and we see all these disturbances and perturbations taking place within the solar system, even though this planet hasn't really arrived here yet.
That's yeah. That's very interesting. I saw a documentary called 5 Ways to Save the Earth, and these were 5 propositions from 5 different scientists that actually proposed to put up huge mirrors up in space and to block out the sunlight, and they even had and in there even was a proposition to actually create what was referred to as a sulfur screen, basically rockets going up into hundreds of rockets, of course, which spew up numerous amounts of CO2 and so forth, but no mention of that.
Which is only going to cause us more problems.
Yeah, exactly.
It does block sunlight.
Exactly.
I think a more viable method may be to simply produce a cloud cover that could cover the world and reflect the UV rays, but of course that's going to cause more warming, and then the problem is, how do we create enough clouds to cover the Earth?
Yeah.
And I don't think that may be possible within our current technology unless we break the embargo of secrecy and silence over the reality of UFOs and their non-human occupants, and then begin to try to utilize this alien technology to try to save the planet.
I mean, I totally agree with you, but in regards to, those who then might not want to go there for whatever reason, politicians or whatever, they should at least be interested in, subsidizing and helping to develop stuff like, the air car. There's a French company now who has brought forward a combustion engine that actually runs on compressed air. So, why isn't that, happening?
Exactly. And I'm reminded of the story that in Berlin at the end of World War II, when the city was mostly in ruins and they didn't have any petroleum-based gasoline supplies, they had a bus that ran on circular magnets and a kind of a giant spring, and every night they'd roll it into the barn and they would sit there and wind this thing up, and then during the day, by engaging and disengaging, they ran this bus all around the city. It kept operating, and it wasn't running on any fuel whatsoever. These things have been around forever, but they have been suppressed by the people who want to maintain their power and control through the wealth of their monopolies over energy, pharmaceuticals, communications, transportation, etc.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer when you kind of get down to it in that sense.
That's right. But it's a no-brainer if you're aware of all of this and aware of the potential and the alternatives. Unfortunately, most people, certainly here in the United States, where they're too distracted by sports and celebrities and everything in the world except what really affects them, they simply don't know that this stuff exists.
Sure. Yeah, so and that's I guess where we lie today. The problem of people, becoming interested in in their own environment and what's going on the planet. But who knows? I guess that a more catastrophic scenario would actually hopefully have help people to awaken from that slumber.
Well, I know, but I hate to get deep into a catastrophe. People begin to realize we need to do something. I'd like to, just for a change, instead of reacting to things, I'd like to proact. And try to do something to stop all this. A thought just occurred to me that you might find interesting is that what we're talking about here is ignorance versus knowledge. And historically, and in researching my book, Rule by Secrecy, I came to realize that in earlier times, this give and take between ignorance and knowledge was referred to as the struggle between light and dark. Okay, which of course goes back to biblical prophecy that says, in the end times there's going to be this big conflict between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. And once you understand that light and darkness refer to knowledge and ignorance, then obviously the winning strategy is to educate people.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's fascinating stuff, you know. I did want to kind of address, I guess we could go in a little bit different area here. I don't know if you have read up on this or what have you, but I saw on your news section on your site that you had the link to an article called the 9/11 Mystery Plane. This
Right.
is something I didn't read the whole piece, quite a lengthy article. I linked it up myself on my website, but this is quite an interesting story.
It's a fascinating story, and it's one that is fully documented. It's not like some theory.
Sure.
And basically the story is that on 9/11, at the time when the two Trade Center towers had been struck by aircraft and when they had ordered all civilian aircraft grounded, there was a large white jet circling over Washington, D.C., and specifically over the Pentagon and over the White House, two of the most restricted areas in the country. And it was photographed. It was even mentioned by CNN reporters, and it looks, for all the world, like one of those big AWAC electronic command planes, and yet the Air Force says it wasn't theirs. So I think there's a real question there that someone in authority should be forced to answer, which is, what was this giant plane circling in restricted Washington airspace at the time the Pentagon was struck, and whose was it and what was it doing?
Yeah. Any thoughts?
Well, you know, it's very clear to me that at the Pentagon, having been a award-winning aviation and aerospace writer for a number of years, it is absolutely certain in my mind that a giant Boeing 757 did not crash into the west wall of the Pentagon. If there was something flying, it was much smaller. And because, number one, we have photographs of the damage to the west wall prior to the collapse of the entire wall, and the hole is down at ground level, and it's only about 19 or 20 feet high and about 20 feet wide. Well, how can you get a 757, which has a wingspan of 125 feet and a tail height of 44 feet, that's 4 stories, how do you get that into essentially a 20 by 20 foot hole? Well, you can't. And even if it hit there, there would be pieces of the airplane lying all over the lawn, which of course there were not. And the key thing there is that the FBI that afternoon went around and confiscated more than 80 security camera tapes, both at the Pentagon and on surrounding businesses. And to this date, they've only released 16 frames of one tape, and even then, you really can't see an airplane. All you see is a giant explosion. And my question is, if it happened the way that the government says it happened, why can't they show us a picture of the hangar or the warehouse where they have assembled the wreckage of Flight 11?
Sure, absolutely.
And why can't they show us pictures of that wreckage? We've seen none of this. All we have is a conspiracy theory that this Honey Hanjor, this Arab Muslim hijacker with little or no flying skills. In fact, just a few weeks before, he had been denied renting a Cessna 150 because he wasn't competent enough to fly it.
Sure.
So how can he fly a big 757? And particularly since the radar track shows that whatever this plane was made a 270-degree circular turn, leveling out at ground level and coming at full speed into the side of the Pentagon, which is what the official story is. And yet, I'm going to tell you and your listeners, it's physically impossible. Because when a plane is flying through the air, it builds up a pocket, a cushion of air under it, okay? And when it's at speed,